What's up, everyone? And as you can see, I got another new mat. I like to sort of switch my mats out every so now and then, for variety. And as you can see today, I'm doing my Krawler deck. This is the deck profile you wanted me to do for this month, or the one that was randomly chosen by the wheel because there's only 4 votes, one for each deck that was picked. And honestly, Krawler's has actually I have a very soft spot for this deck because this was actually the first deck, or technically the first archetype I've ever used. Like before I used Krawlers, I was just running a bunch of dragons because that's just where my Yu-Gi-Oh level was. It was terrible. And so when Krawlers are very cheap, so I was able to get them for like a few bucks and started to get some wins with it. And my favorite card to run in this was Swords of Revealing Light. That card actually does work sometimes, but this is kind of like a more of a competitive build for Krawlers. And without further ado, let's get right into the deck profile. Now, Krawlers, it is a flip-based deck, aka it's slow. And to start off, I run 3 Krawler Spine. Spine, when it's flipped, you can destroy one monster on the field. 3 Goliath. When it's flipped, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand or graveyard face up attack position or face down defense position, except Goliath. Next, I run 3 Krawler Receptor. When it's flipped, add 1 Krawler monster from deck to hand. 2 Axon. When it's flipped, destroy 1 spell and trap. I don't like the lighting. That's better. And 1 Ranveer. When it's flipped, target 2 Krawler monsters in your graveyard, add them to your hand. And all these Krawlers have a secondary effect is when they leave the field by opponent's card effect, you can special summon 2 Krawlers from your deck. So let's say they banish it. Special 2 Krawlers from deck. Say they bounce it back to your hand. Special 2 Krawlers from deck. This deck has one of the best recursion out of most of the decks I've seen. Considering it's not when it's destroyed by battle or when it's sent to the graveyard, it's just when it leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect. So, like whenever my opponents would activate, say, Storming Mirror Force, for example, I'm like, you're just helping me out. Thank you. So destroying them by battle is usually the best way, but the field spell kind of protects that. So this deck has a lot of protection. I would say if the Krawlers were not a flip-based deck, this would be a tier 1, maybe even a tier 0 deck. But unfortunately, it is a flip deck, so just by nature of flip effects, it makes it a lot slower. There is one other Krawler that I do not run, and that is Krawler Dendrite. That's essentially a Foolish Burial, but I have several ways to get Krawlers into the grave, because I do run a Foolish Burial, but I just didn't really like it, and most of the times when I have it, I don't want it, because I'd rather have Receptor, Spine, or Galil. So I don't run Dendrite. Next, I run 1 Morphing Jar and 3 Morphing Jar number 2. I am praying this card comes further off the ban list, because that would really help out this deck quite a lot. Now, Morphing Jar, it's pretty simple. It's not really has a lot of text. It's just flip, both players discard their hand, then each player draw 5 cards. So this can help your opponent out too, but it helps you out more, especially with World Legacy and Pawns. Then Morphing Jar number 2, when it's flipped, all monsters get sent back into the deck. Then you excavate the same number of monsters that you was sent back to the deck. Special summon all, I think it's level 4 or lower monsters in face down defense position, and the rest of the cards are sent to the grave. So, pretty good. It's really good for disrupting your opponent. I was surprised to see this thing come straight from being banned to completely off the list, so that was a shock. Of course, it wasn't going to do anything because it's a flip effect, so why is Morphing Jar still limited? And in Krawlers, this deck can actually abuse these 2 more so than any other deck, mainly due to the trap card World Legacy and Pawns. We'll get to that in a bit. Next, I run 2 World Dance. Now, this is mainly for your links. During your opponent's turn, during damage calculation, If a Link monster battles a monster quick effect, you can discard this card. That opponent's battling monster loses 3,000 attack. So if your opponent's monster has under 3,000 attack, boom, 0. Unfortunately, it does only work against your links, but that's what you want to end on is your Krawler links. So it's fine. It's the hand trap of choice for this deck. You could run Ash, you could run Valor or Nibiru if you want, but this works out much better with this deck in my opinion, just by nature of function. Moving on to the spells, and oh boy, I'm excited to talk about this one. 3 World Legacy and Shadow. Let me zoom in there. World Legacy and Shadow is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful field spells for an archetype. It's not the most powerful field spell in general, because you got stuff like Chicken Game, Mystic Mine, among many others. But for an archetype, it does a lot for the crawlers. First off, all crawlers gain 300 attack and defense. And once per turn, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower insect monster from your hand in face up or face down position. So that's another set. And its protection is really good. When your opponent's flip monster is destroyed by battle with an opponent's monster, you can send, not destroy, send that opponent's monster to the grave. So this completely avoids destruction protection. And considering it's a flip deck, so let's say I have Renvir face down. They attack it. Renvir's effect is activated. Then the opponent's monster is sent to the grave. This is why I say if this deck was not a flip deck, it would be tier 1, without a doubt. I also run 2 Mystic Mine, of course, and also the 1 Terraforming. Mystic Mine, I was a little bit hesitant on this, to be honest. Mainly because sometimes this deck can start out pretty slow. And this card can hurt me as well. But sometimes I may not have an ideal hand. Because if you don't have, let's say, the field spell or World Legacy and Pawns, you're going to be much more limited. And if you have, let's say, something like Mystic Mine, it can help to at least buy you a turn. And let's say you want to set 1 monster, then use World Legacy and Shadow's effect to set another one, then activate Mystic Mine. That can also work too, because Mystic Mine will at least burn your opponent of 1 turn. And for a flip effect, that's mainly why it's so slow, because it requires a turn to get started. So Mystic Mine kind of helps out there. I also run 3 double summon. Honestly, when I was playing this deck before, I didn't run this. Now when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you idiot. Why did you run this before? Like, why did I not use this card before? You can conduct 2 normal summons, so this is an extra summon. So, for example, let's say I have this and the field spell. Set 1, special summon with the field spell, and another one with double summon. I don't know why I wasn't using double summon before. But yeah, run 3 double summon. If you're not, I don't know why you wouldn't be. Also run 3 Book of Moon. Gotta love that platinum rare. Book of Moon, it's a pretty well-known card. Target 1 face-up monster opponent controls, target 1 face-up monster on the field, change that target to face-down defense position. This can work in 2 ways. On your monsters, since they are flip effects, or your opponent's monsters, so like when your opponent summons, let's say... So whenever your opponent summons a monster, like let's say they're going to use it for a link play, you can activate Book of Moon, flip that monster face down, and then they cannot use it for link, XC, or single plays. They can use it for fusion plays, but do you know of any fusion decks that are currently dominating the metagame? No? Me neither. Next, I run 2 World Legacy Succession. This card is like a Monster Reborn, but weaker, but still pretty good. Target 1 monster in your graveyard, special summon to zone a link monster points to. And considering Krawler is a link deck, that works out just fine. And of course the 1 Monster Reborn, as well as the 1 Foolish Burial. Moving on to the traps. I run 3 World Legacy and Pawns. This card is really good. This is the card that allows you to use Morphing Jar 1 and 2. Because World Legacy Pawns, when you have a monster face down, you can target one face down monster you control, change it to face up attack or defense position. And you can shuffle one Krawler monster from your deck, or from your grave, into the main deck. Target one face up monster you control, change it to face down defense position. While sadly, you can only use one effect per turn. Let's say, for example, you have Morphing Jar set down, you activate this, flip back face up. You activate this effect, and you can also use Book of Moon, put it back face down. So it can help to reuse those effects, and also trigger off flip effects during your opponent's turn. And that's the Krawler monsters themselves aren't too impressive, but the main trap and the field spell, they're really good. I also run 2 Infinite Impermanents and 1 Metaverse. If you want to, let's say, take out 1 Mystic Mine for a 3rd copy of Infinite Impermanence, that's also doable. But Metaverse kind of goes along with Mystic Mine and Impermanence. It's just a good card in general. Next for the extra deck. Now, I won't be showing a complete extra deck because with Krawlers, that's not exactly easy because the win condition of this deck requires you to have 6 Krawler monsters on the field. That's easier said than done. First up, we run 3 Krawler Qualiarch, 3 Neurogos, and 3 Synapses. Now, Krawler is, I guess, more or less the boss monster of this deck, and this is your main win condition. But on Neurogos and Synapses, for Synapses' case, the Krawler monster that this card points to can attack up to twice, and Neurogos, the monster's damage done to a monster this card points to, is doubled. And Qualiarch, which is the best one, gets 3 different effects, depending on how many Krawler monsters you control. If you control 2 Krawler monsters, all Krawler monsters gain 300 attack and defense. Your opponent, if you have 4 Krawlers, your opponent's cards and effects cannot be activated during the battle phase. And if you control 6 Krawlers, you can attack directly. So if you have 6, you get all those effects. And so you can get a lot of attack increase through these 3, especially with the field spell, because that's another 300. These are the cards you're going to be going into most. I run 2 Subterra Behemoth Fiendus. This you won't be using as much, but you can still go into it, and it's not too bad. Well, if it wasn't too bad, I wouldn't be running it. It's pretty good. First off, during your main phase, you can send 1 flip monster from your deck to the graveyard, Foolish Burial. And if you do, special summon 1 monster from your hand and face down defense position to your zone this card points to. You can only use this effect once per turn. So this is pretty good for Foolish Burying or special summoning from the hand. So if you want to go into this first and then like maybe link it away for, let's say, Synapses, for example, because Synapses requires 2 Earth monsters, which Fiendus is an Earth type. You can do that. And it also has an additional effect. If a monster this card points to is flipped face up, add a flip monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand. After the Fiendus and the Link monsters, anything else is kind of irrelevant. I run 1 Gaia Saber and 1 Saryuja. Honestly, after the 3 Krawler Links and Fiendus, it doesn't really matter what you put in. You can throw in an Appaloosa, you can throw in Brawl Sword. I'm going to just throw these in because they're Earth. And if you put in something like Appaloosa and Brawl Sword, that can end up hurting you because how are you going to get rid of it? The only way you can get rid of it is through Saryuja or Gaia. You want to end on 6 of the Krawler extra deck monsters. However, their requirements are 2 Krawler monsters, 2 Earth monsters, or 2 insect monsters. So I have these ones because they are Earth. And that's going to be all for this deck profile. Let me know, what do you think of Krawlers? Do you think they're a pretty cool deck? And as always, I'll see you in the next video I make. Bye.